Hello and welcome back. This is Jennifer and thank you for stopping by. Today I'm sharing with you lots of ways to use your stencils creatively. This includes doing multiple types of ink, stretching your stencils so they fit over a larger card, reformatting them, and much more. I'm also going to show a fun way to use a hot foil plate without needing a machine or the foil, and the cool looks that you can get. All right, let's go ahead and jump in, and we're going to start out with this card and a few using the same stencil set, all with a different look. This is the new Pinkfresh Studio Holiday Botanical Background Stencil Set. You can see it creates kind of a border around the edge of your card, but we'll change that up a bit too. Now, I'm going to be using a variety of inking tools today. The one that I'm using first is from Rabbit Hole Designs. This is the Bitty Blender Brush. I like to show a lot of options in my videos. I like that these can hang, they've got those little loops on the top, or stand up in a container easily. I chose them because they're small and will help us get into these little areas. Okay, now I'm using my MISTI stamping tool just to hold my cardstock and my stencil in place. I just find it handy. I like to show a few different options to help with your stencil efforts in my videos. This is nice because you can put the cardstock and the stencil right into the corner. And since this is a layering stencil set, if you put each stencil right into the corner, they'll line up great. Here I'm using my little bitty blending brushes along with some Pinkfresh Studio inks. This is Grassy Knoll. And I'm applying this ink light in some areas and heavier in others. So it looks like I'm using two colors of ink. This is one of my favorite tips for stencils, is to use as many shades or colors of inks as possible because it just creates more variety in the final result. So in this case, I'm doing light and dark amount of the same exact color. Now you can use absolutely any inks for this and any inking tool. The reason I chose these itty bitty brushes today is because the end is pretty small. So I can do some areas darker and some lighter without having to mask. So you see how I can get into small areas to apply more ink if I wanted to. You could also switch up the colors of ink too, which you'll see me do later on. Once I'm done applying the color over the first stencil, I just use a cloth to wipe it off, and now we can switch to the second stencil. And so far it looks like I've used two inks, maybe even two stencils to do that. Okay, so since my cardstock is in the corner of my MISTI, I can put my stencil right into the corner, the next stencil, and I know it'll line up. Each time I'll put the next stencil right into that corner. This time I'm using a key lime color, and again I'm trying to vary the color a little bit, the amount of ink that I put down. I do like the look of having uneven ink when you're doing stencils because it's different. It makes it different than something you would get from stamping. Now after I applied some of that key lime ink color, I'm wiping it clean, and then I'm also adding some olive color. The reason I wiped it clean is because I wanted to have this true color, and the other ink color would still be on the stencil if I hadn't cleaned it. So I'm just applying some of the olive here and there. I then can wipe it clean. We can look at the results so far, look how pretty that is, and then we'll come in with the third stencil. Now this one I want to be as dark as possible, so I'll use my darkest green ink, which is the evergreen color. And this time I'm really putting down the ink very heavily. One thing I do recommend when inking over a stencil with small areas like this is to make sure you apply the ink in both directions. So I'm turning in one way and then I switch and I turn in the other direction. That is so you get into all the nooks and crannies. If you don't only turn one way, like keep swiping it around in one direction, it will only get some edges of the stencil. So by going in both directions, it really helps to get better coverage. Now we're in with the fourth stencil, and this is a bunch of berries. I wanted to have several different colors of blueberries on this, just because I like blue. So I am applying one color of blue, using the small blending brush to get into the small areas. And I also have a post-it note there to mask off some of the other circle openings, so I can make sure to get each one a different color. So this time I'm coming in with the sky blue. I did wipe off my brush. I only have one brush per color, but if I want to switch from a dark blue to a light blue, I just wipe off the excess ink onto a dry cloth, and then I'm good to go. So here you can see how I'm just easily moving around a post-it note to cover up some of the openings so I can make sure I get a lot of different colors here. This time I'm coming in with a mint color. So this is a really good way to really get more out of your stencils, is to use multiple colors of inks over one stencil. And look how beautiful that is. It looks like I used a lot of stencils, but it's just the 4 in the set. Now I could use this as is, you'll see me do so later, but in this case I wanted to cut it in half so that I could rotate the pieces and make it look like borders coming from the center of my card. So that's one way to get more from your stencils. It's to change it up. Look at that. You get a different look this way. So don't be afraid to stencil a background and then cut it up or die cut it to look differently. We have those 2 edge pieces of the card. Now it's time to create that piece in the center. I'm using hot foil plate for this. I will show you how to foil with it, but later in this video, I will show you what you can do with these plates if you don't have foil or a foil machine. So stay tuned for that. There are 3 new hot foil backgrounds. We have the chevron, the diamond, and the diagonal. I'll be using the chevron for this first example. To foil with hot foil plates, you need some sort of foil machine. I'll be using the Spellbinders Glimmer foil machine because it works with my Spellbinders Platinum. There are other machines for other die cut machines. I found the best foiling results if you have a super smooth cardstock. You could either use this Spellbinders Specialty Glimmer cardstock, which is very smooth, or you can use Hammermill, which is what I'm using today, and I'll link to those options below. You also need to cut a piece of hot foil meant for a foil machine. I use the Spellbinders Glimmer foil. Now I have a piece of that cardstock cut to the right size, and I'm taping it on the side to our hot foil plate. I just find this helps in getting good results. I will then open that up and then place the foil so that the pretty side of the foil is touching the hot foil plate. I will then put that down onto my Glimmer machine, which I've let warm up. I then will put on top of that the shims that come with the machine, and I also add in 1 cardstock shim just to help. Then I press the button on the side. When the light stops flashing, it's time to go on to the next step. It doesn't take long, and that is to put it through your die cut machine. So I'll run it back and forth. The Glimmer machine puts on the heat. This puts the pressure, which causes a beautiful foil result. If you want a closer look at this machine, I will link to a video up on the top right. Okay, so now I'm taking this off and watch this. Beautiful shine. And that is the chevron hot foil plate. Okay, now I'm going to take this and trim it down so I just have the center section, and I will save the 2 edges for another card. I thought it would be fun to ink over this, so it is similar to the inking that we did on the rest of the card. So I'm using a large blending brush and some Pinkfresh Studio ink, and I'm applying it right over the foil. You can do this no problem. Just wipe off the excess ink with a dry cloth when you're done. I felt this helped it to tie in better with the card we've designed. Okay, so I want that center piece to kind of stand up in the center of my card. So I cut 3 pieces of scrap cardstock, and it's slightly smaller than our blue piece, and I'll glue it to the back of the blue piece. I'm now gluing that to the center of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. On the right and the left of that, I will add our stenciled pieces. Remember, I'm rotating these so it looks like the border's coming from the center of our card instead of the edge, which is what the stencil was designed for. So I'm kind of changing the look of it. After I've glued the 2 pieces to the 2 sides, I can flip it over and cut off the excess. I then added lots of different pearls to the background. I did 3 different shades of blue, and I will link to the different pearls I used in my description below. At this point, I was questioning that centerpiece. I wanted a dark matte around it, so a little bit of dark showed on the edges. Still thinking about it, and then I happened to get a black fingerprint, ink fingerprint on it, so I decided to go ahead and redo it. So I redid that centerpiece, glued it onto a dark teal colored mat, and then I'm gluing that over the piece on my card. So no one will ever know I had that fingerprint there or that I changed my mind. The last thing we need is a sentiment, and I'll be using this set many times throughout this video. This is the new Pinkfresh Studio Perfect Sentiments Holiday. Now there is a stamp set and a coordinating die, and there's also a hot foil plate. You can use the coordinating die with either of them. So what you do is you either stamp all of those at once, or hot foil all of those at once, and then use the coordinating die to cut them out at once. I actually use both options, foiled and stamped, throughout this video. Here's the foiled one first. I did the hot foiling as I showed you before, using that hot foil plate, some Hammermill smooth cardstock, and some black foil. After heating it up on the Glimmer machine, I'm taking it over to my die cut machine to apply pressure. And check this out, all of those sentiments black foiled, so it's got some shine to it and will really stand out. I just use a dry brush to knock off any excess foil. And now I have that large coordinating die that will cut them all out at once. And by the way, the leftover foil piece, you could glue that to a background for another card. I'm a big fan of these sets that allow you to do lots of sentiments at once. I keep the extras in my drawer and I go back and use them quite often. Okay, now over on the left here, I have an holiday cheer, the foiled one I just created. And on the right, I have the holiday cheer that I clear heat embossed. So I stamped it with black ink and clear heat embossed it. Similar looks, the foiled is much smoother, but both are great options. So I'm using one of the holiday cheer and gluing it right to the bottom center of the card. I wanted the focus to be on that simple sentiment and then the fun little borders that we created for the side. So we changed the look of our stencil by creating the whole background, cutting it up, and reformatting it. We also changed it up by adding multiple colors of ink so that we could really make the most of it. Then we have our hot foil plate piece in the center where we added the ink on top so it better matched the background. Now I like the look of that reformatted background so much that I decided to do a second card. This time in the center area I used the hot foil plate but not with foil. This is a great way to get more from your hot foil plates. Now you can use any die cut machine. I'm using my Spellbinders, and this is an embossing mat, that tan piece. It's flexible and allows you to make impressions with dies instead of cutting with them. It also allows you to make an impression with the hot foil plate instead of foiling with it. I'm giving my cardstock just a few light mists with some water just to help to prevent cracking. I'm putting that on the embossing mat, then my hot foil plate on top of it, and then my embossing plate. Again, different machines can do this in different ways. You just look at the instruction manual. So I'm running that back and forth, and because I used the embossing mat, that plate makes an impression, and look how beautiful that is. Just as sharp as an embossing folder, and a great way to extend the life and the creativity of your hot foil plates. So this is the card that I created, very similar to the last one. I did mat it with a holographic cardstock there in the center, just to add some sparkle. I also used lots of pink and red pearls in the background. And at this point, I was unsure. I didn't really like the pink cardstock I chose in the center there. I overthink things. I don't recommend it in crafting, but it's who I am. So I actually changed this. I took that pink off the center and I used a lighter pink cardstock. And this time I used the diamond hot foil plate. Did the exact same technique using the embossing mat, glued that to the center and made it a horizontal card. So sometimes I like to change things. I don't always show it in videos, but do know that's part of crafting, changing your mind, redoing things, and that's okay. As long as you're happy with the results and you think the recipient will be, you're good to go. Now I really like the look of using that hot foil plate to make an impression, so I thought I'd do another example of that and show another way to change up the look of a stencil. In this case, I'm using the same stencil set. And this involves inking on darker cardstock. When inking on darker cardstock, I think it's best to use a white pigment ink first. So I'm using craft cardstock here, and I have a bright white pigment ink, and I'm kind of pouncing it onto the open areas of the stencil. You can then dab off any excess there may be. After heat setting that quickly, I'm putting the stencil back on, but I'm slightly shifting it. See how I'm shifting it down a little bit? This allows me to get an offset look. So here, I'm going to do it again. I'm shifting it down. See how you can see a little bit of the brown peeking out there through the holes? And this time I'm putting a colored dye ink on top. What happens is anywhere there's the white pigment ink first, the colored ink will show up brighter. That white pigment ink kind of sits on top of the cardstock. So when you put the green on it, you see it more. Anywhere you put the green directly onto the craft, it soaks in and gets darker because dye inks soak into the paper more. So when I wipe this off here, check it out. You get this offset look that is super cool. See how you can see the little bit of white and the little dark green on the other side and the bright green in the center. This works on any dark color of cardstock. I've done this offset technique before. I'll link to a video up here if you want to see a closer look at it. Now, I do like to press my white pigment ink pad onto my work surface and pick up the ink from there. That way I don't accidentally transfer any colored ink onto the pad. I also like to do the same with my colored dye ink. I press that onto my glass work surface and pick up the ink from there so I don't accidentally get white pigment ink onto my colored dye ink pad. I just like to protect my pads as much as possible. So there I did the white, then I did green on top. When we remove that, check that out. I just love how it's offset a bit to allow that white line to show. I continued to use the stencils as I showed you earlier in the video, overlapping the white and the green inks or the red inks. And there are two different backgrounds that are similar, but on different cardstock. And look at that result. I just love it. Definitely a way to get the most from your stencils. So this time I did a little mist on the back of that inked piece, laying it down onto my embossing mat, and I'm putting the diamond hot foil plate on top. Again, we're just making an impression with this instead of doing the foil. Run that back and forth and look at the fun interest this adds to this. You could skip this step if you want, but I think it just adds some fun to this simple card. All I need to do to this now is add a sentiment to the center, add it to a note card, and then add some pearls. And finally, I use glossy accents on a few of my inked pearls just for a little bit more shine. So here is the final card. It is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Has wonderful texture to the background and that fun inking technique, which gives a different look to that stencil set. The Warmest Wishes is from the Perfect Sentiments holiday set I showed you earlier. I clear heat embossed that on black ink and then use the die to cut it out. So there is a way to use your stencils creatively and to use your hot foil plates in a different way. I thought I'd show another example of using a stencil in a format that it really wasn't intended for. In this case, I used a wreath, but I did 2 wreaths together to create a background. And I'll suggest another way to use these for an even different look. Now for this, I use the new Pinkfresh Studio Thrill of Hope set. Now there is a stamp set, a stencil set, and dies and hot foil plates that all work well together. I love that Pinkfresh does this. So you can see the coordinating dies will cut out the stamp sentiments. The coordinating dies will also cut out the hot foil sentiments if you prefer that. Now I'm not using the stamp set, hot foil plates, or dies today. I am just using the stencil set that coordinates with this also. So any of these can be purchased separately so you can use whatever you would want. Now this stencil set has multiple layers to it and you can create a beautiful wreath. In fact, you could do bright colors for like spring if you wanted, but I'm going to go for a holiday look. Now I'm not going to show it all because it's very easy and I did the layering like I showed you before. But what I'm doing here is I am inking one of the wreaths onto the left side of my cardstock, then rotating it and inking it on the right side of the cardstock. I didn't measure anything out. I'm just kind of winging it. This is a very forgiving set. I'm doing the same tricks that I showed you earlier, where I use multiple colors over one stencil so I can get a variety of greens in there. There are many stencils to this, very easy to line up, and check out the result that you get after inking them all. Now, I know I didn't show all the steps. I wanted to save some time so I can show you some more techniques in this video, but it's very easy to figure out, I promise. But I wanted to show you that another way you can enhance your stenciled background is to add some stamping into it too. So in this case, I have these 2 wreaths that join together in the center. I thought I'd add a few little stamped branches kind of sticking out from the wreath here and there. It just adds interest, makes the results more full, and just makes you get a different look from the stencil set. I kind of made these stick out so they're kind of spilling out from the wreath, and I did quick and simple stamping, all with a lighter green ink. So here is the final result. I trimmed that background down and added it to a red 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. I also added lots of red pearls for berries and silver gemstones, which I thought would catch the light nicely. So all that background was done with the stencils and that additional bit of stamping here and there. Didn't take long to do it all. And then I added a Warmest Wishes that I white heat embossed on red cardstock using the Perfect Sentiment set I showed you earlier. So here I got this different look by using the wreath. Another thing you could do is ink it up twice hanging off the other side. So it kind of looks like a swag along the top, and you can do that along the bottom too. You can overlap your wreaths more to make them fuller. You could do all kinds of things to create unique looks from one stencil set. Okay, now I'm really excited about this next pair of cards. One is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, which is what the stencil set really is designed for. However, I stretched it to make a taller card, a mini slimline card. This is another good way of taking your stencils and using them creatively. This is the Pinkfresh Studio Wintry Forest Stencil Set. I think this is a great set because you could ink it up in different colors with different mediums and do really cool backgrounds. Each one kind of builds on the last one, so you can quickly create a background that is colorful and beautiful. Well, I thought I would do them to create 2 cards, one that is how it's intended and one that is longer. So I have this in the corner of my MISTI, and I am applying some blue ink here. I'm starting with the light color, and I'm going to work my way to darker along the bottom. This is a super fast card to pull together. So after I did this on one piece, I'm going to move over to another piece and do the exact same thing. This is a super light blue cardstock that's old. It's been in my stash. It has a little texture to it. So you'll see the inking kind of picks up the texture. That's what you're seeing there. Okay, now let's go on to the second stencil. Now for the first one, I'm putting the stencil right up into the corner once again. So I'm using the stencil how it was intended. I'm using a slightly darker blue ink for this. Now I'm just kind of fading it out towards the left there, towards the bottom of the piece, so that I don't overlap a ton with the color and it saves time. Now the other one, watch. Instead of putting it in the corner, I'm going to move it down a bit so that I could really make a taller background piece. So I just moved it about a 1/2 inch, and now I'm applying the same color of ink over it. You could use absolutely any inks for this and any inking tool. I'm using a Simon Says stamp blending brush, and I'm using the same one for all of the colors. So I'm back to the first one, the traditional one, where I put the stencil into the corner every time. This is the one where it's kind of, I'm using it how it was intended to be used. This time I'm coming in with the Slumber. And by the way, the blues and the bluish purples in the Pinkfresh ink family are incredible. Okay, so here we are to the one where we're stretching it, and I've shifted my stencil down. It's almost an inch shifted down this time, and I'm applying the same color to this. This is really fun because I'm creating 2 backgrounds very quickly. So here's a comparison so far. On the left is the one that's how it's intended. On the right is the one where we're stretching it. All right, I'm continuing on to the next stencil. This is right in the corner, the original one. I love this blue jay color. Now we'll move on to the one we're stretching, and I move that stencil down about 1 1/4 inches. You can move it down as much as you want, doesn't matter at all. So look at your layering sets and think of what you can do to change up the looks. Okay, now we're into the last stencil. This is the original one, putting it right into the corner and applying a super dark sapphire ink color here. I love this color. Then we'll move on to the stretched one, and I'll shift this one quite a bit, almost 2 inches, all the way down there to the corner, so I can really make this as long as possible. So in the end, I have 2 backgrounds, one that's traditional A2 and one that could be used on a slimline card. Now there is another stencil in this that applies some snow to those bottom trees. At first I thought I just wanted to use white pigment ink, so I'm just kind of pouncing that into the openings here on both of the pieces. But after I did this, you could leave it as is. I changed my mind and decided I wanted sparkle on that area. So over that inking that I did with the white pigment ink, I applied a fallen snow glitter paste from Brutus Monroe. I just thought it would be nice to have a little bit of texture and sparkle. Now I kept the rest of this background simple. It's all ink, right? But you could do foiling over some of it. You could do more glitter paste over different things. You could spray it with some shimmer spritz. So many things you can do, but I kept mine pretty clean and simple. So after applying this glitter paste to both of the backgrounds, I let it dry for a few minutes, and now I'm trimming them down. On the left, you see the traditional A2. This one I could cut to be slimline. See how tall it is? It could be a slimline card. But I'd rather make a mini slimline card. I enjoy the mini slimline size, so I'm going to cut this down significantly. I made it bigger than I needed just to demonstrate for you, but I am going to cut this down to be about 3 by 6¼ inches. Okay, now I added those onto a white note card, but then I thought it'd be fun to have a little bit of falling snow come down. So I have some white paint that I put on my desk. Too much came out. You don't need that much, by the way. And then I have Shimmer Spritz from Tsukineko. I'm going to spray a little bit of that onto my white paint and mix it up with a brush, and then flick this onto my backgrounds for a little bit of falling snow. Now there are a million ways you can do this. I just thought this was the easiest. And by adding that bit of Shimmer Spritz to it, the white little droplets will also have a bit of sparkle to them when they dry. Okay, now let's look at the finished card. Once that was dry, I have a 4¼ by 5½ inch note card. I added one of my sentiments from the set I showed you earlier. And then the only thing I added in addition to that were some little iridescent stars. Those are from Trinity Stamps Oh My Stars. Very inexpensive, a little goes a long way, and look at that sparkle. It just adds so much to this simple design. I also love that you could change up the colors of this and get a completely different look. And then that snow on the bottom there, the little bit of sparkle, you can't really see it, but there's texture and sparkle to it. And then we have the white paint that we flicked on top that adds even more interest. Now the pair to this card is a mini slimline. This is on a note card that is 3¼ by 6¼ inches, and use a mini slimline envelope for it. I really like this size. And I added a sentiment and also more of those little stars. So with this one, because I stretched how I inked my stencils, I was able to cover that taller area. If I used the stencils as they were originally intended, that would have been harder to do. So look at your stencils and see what you can do to stretch them. Now, I like this idea of getting a taller card from what was designed for a smaller card. Let me just give you some more ideas. This is the Pinkfresh Studio Holiday Ornaments Stencil Set. See how you can create these beautiful layered inked stencils very quickly? And there's a coordinating die. Well, instead of using them as is for an A2 card, you could mask off and do each ornament individually and have them in different spots on a bigger card. So you can make like a 5x7 card and kind of space them out more. So think about that, how you can mask your stencils so that you can creatively ink it on a different size card. You can make the strings longer on it by just drawing a string on it and then have the branch all the way at the top of the card. Now here's another idea for stretching a stencil set for a larger card. Remember this one from earlier? You could ink it up twice, once on the left of your cardstock and once on the right of your cardstock, right up next to each other. Then cut the whole thing in half and you'd have a really long border. So it would be twice the length of this. So you could use that long border on a slimline card or mini slimline or 5x7. So think about that. Maybe you can ink up a stencil twice next to each other and then cut it to cover a larger area. So I just thought I'd mention those ideas too on ways to stretch your stencils. So that's today's video. I hope you'll dig through your stencils and think about how you can use them creatively too. If you are interested in what I talked about today, everything is linked below in my YouTube description. You can also go to my blog for close-up photos and much more. And at the end here, I'll link to a couple other stretcher stencil type videos that may be helpful also. Thanks for spending this time with me. Have a wonderful day, and I'll be back soon.